Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. It begins with 5 friends camping for one night at a clearing by the edge of a lake. The one navigating the students is a dork named Wade who's brought them to the area in search of a large crop. His best friend Richie joins him in setting up their tents outside of the long since abandoned summer camp. That night as they sit around the campfire, Wade tells the group the horror story of a slasher known to police as the Camp Crystal Lake Killer. In a flashback to 1980, a camp counselor is shown as the final girl after her friends were slaughtered by the psychotic killer Pamela Voorhees. She's taken revenge on the neglectful counselors for the death of her son that drowned in the lake years earlier but falls one victim short when the final girl beheads Pam and flees into the woods. For whatever reason, be it lightning, a Necronomicon, or a rival supernatural entity, the child was resurrected and witnessed who killed his mother. When the coast was clear, the child emerged from the bushes to retrieve the machete and disappear into the woods. 29 years later, the young Jason Voorhees has grown up into a large zombie of a man who still resides at a rundown cabin on the lake. Since there's probably 1,000 crystal lakes in the country, Wade's friends take their chances, 2 of whom, Mike and his girlfriend Whitney, decide to go explore the area. They come across the campsite from the story and an abandoned cabin containing a locket with a picture of a young Pamela Voorhees inside it. Mike remarks that she looked like Whitney, who finds the whistles belonging to the counselors killed during the mother's rampage. They find the childhood bedroom of someone named Jason, so Whitney wants to leave just in case Wade's story's actually true, but Mike wants to look around some more. Meanwhile, Richie's girlfriend Amanda begins to get frisky, so Wade leaves them alone and goes into the woods to use the bathroom. He looks down and realizes that he's standing in the middle of the plot of pot he's been looking for, when Jason appears wearing a burlap sack and charges with his machete. Amanda hears a noise outside their tent, so Richie goes to investigate, and comes across Wade's severed ear and mutilated corpse. Suddenly Amanda's grabbed from the tent by Jason and Richie runs back as he hears the screams, only to find her hanging above the fire pit being cooked inside her sleeping bag. When he tries to save her, Rich gets caught in a bear trap and he's forced to watch as his girl's corpse collapses out of the bag. A few moments later, Mike and Whitney find a shrine containing Pamela's severed head when suddenly Jason begins stabbing at them through the floor with his machete. He brings down Mike, then grabs and drags him through the floorboards underground where he's never seen again. Whitney makes it out of the cabin as the new final girl but goes back to the campsite and attempts to release Richie from the trap. Jason appears behind them and mercilessly hacks into Richie's head before going at the helpless Whitney, who's never been seen since. 6 weeks later, her brother Clay goes searching the area again after police found no traces of Whitney or any of the other missing people. He has a run-in at a gas station with a group of party-anxious students who are heading to Trent's parents' lake house for the weekend. He's dismissive to Clay, but his partner Jenna takes a liking to him and says that she hopes he finds his sister. When they part ways, Clay gets pulled over by Officer Brack and we hear that all the other families have moved on to searching other locations for their missing loved ones. The first house Clay pulls into is owned by an old lady that gives him the same advice that Brack gave him, that he should leave town. She says that everyone that goes missing around these parts are dead and implies that there's a man behind it all, but says nothing more. The second location Clay pulls into is a barn owned by Donnie, who threatens him for trespassing before offering to sell him some dope, having found Jason's stash. Clay refuses, and without him having seen Whitney, he leaves to continue the search while the hillbilly returns to stripping the buds. When Jason finds out that his crops are being raided, he leaves the campsite to hunt Donnie down in his own home. He comes across Donnie fondling a mannequin, but before Jason can kill him, Donnie tears off the hood, revealing his deformed face. Upon receiving a negative reaction, Jason slits Donnie's throat before replacing his burlap sack with a hockey mask that he first makes sure strikes an equally imposing figure to the sack. Meanwhile, the 7 socialites arrive at the massive lake house, where Trent stresses out at every drink spilt as he doesn't want any of them there. It's revealed by his perceptive girlfriend that he only invited them around to show off how rich his parents are, and orders his yes-man Nolan to deliver fuel to the boat down at the docks for him. The equally as obnoxious best friend brings his girlfriend Chelsea down and they take the boat out for a topless water ski. Later that day, Jenna's met at the front door by Clay, who's doing his door knocking and didn't realize this was the unhelpful Trent's place. She brings him inside, but Trent immediately kicks him out, so Jenna leaves with Clay to help him look for Whitney, while Bree's happy about this because she's planning to hook up with Trent. The last 2 students are Chewie and his heterosexual lifemate Lawrence, who have been cracking jokes the entire trip and, like Jenna, are seemingly out of place in being friends with Trent. Meanwhile, Nolan's towing Chelsea around the lake when she wipes out, and Nolan turns the boat around to pick her up, only to be shot through the head with an arrow fired by Jason from the shoreline. The boat then dings Chelsea in the head, who suddenly spots Jason standing on the shore and swims beneath the dock to elude him. Jason passes over the top of her, and just when Chelsea thinks he's left, a machete plunges through the boardwalk into the top of her skull. As they come upon the deserted Camp Crystal Lake, Clay and Jenna search every cabin to come up empty-handed. They begin to hear someone approaching, so they hide beneath a stack of canoes and witness Jason hauling a headless body back to his lair. He notices Clay's pack, which he accidentally left out, and turns on the campground spotlights to assist in looking for them. He turns over the canoes, but when he can't find anyone, he takes the pack and returns to his underground hideout. Jason spent the last 30 years building a tunnel system that branches around the lake, which makes it seem like he's appearing out of thin air, when he's actually running at full speed through the shortcuts he's created. It's also revealed at this moment that Jason has kidnapped Whitney and kept her chained up inside the tunnels due to her resemblance to his mother. He uses bells as an alarm system that tell him exactly where to locate the intruders, but wasn't home when Clay and Jenna set them off earlier. As Jason gets on his grindstone, Whitney notices her brother's backpack amongst the confiscated items and finds his GPS inside. When Jason finishes sharpening his sword, he returns to hunting the intruders, who flee back to the house to warn Jenna's friends. The GPS is damaged, but Whitney manages to take it apart and use a wire to pick her cuffs before escaping her imprisonment. She passes over Jason's morgue and up through a trapdoor in a cabin and into the woods. Meanwhile, Chewie's given some liquid courage by Lawrence to talk to Bree, who's so far spent the whole uneventful night dancing in front of the boys. She makes the love-starved Chewie burn his mouth on a shot, and he breaks a chair that Trent demands be fixed. Bree takes Trent upstairs to begin cheating on his absent girlfriend while being perved on by Jason from the window, but the lakeside slasher decides to go for Chewie, who's all alone at the shed searching for tools. He finds a hockey stick when the angry goalie appears behind him, and he just assumes that he's looking for his equipment, before he grabs a screwdriver to defend himself, but Jason takes his arm and slowly pushes it into Chewie's own throat. Whitney's just reached the lake house outside, but the fornicating couple are unable to hear her banging on the glass, and Jason recaptures her. Lawrence is interrupted from his alone time by the arrival of Clay and Jenna trying to warn everybody to stay inside. Trent exits the bedroom, ironically accusing Jenna of cheating on him with Clay, and the two almost fight, until eventually calming down and calling the police. Jason even cuts the power to the house when Lawrence decides to go out alone to the shed to retrieve his best friend, despite everyone warning him to remain inside. He locates Chewie dead at the far end of the shed when Jason appears, but Lawrence is too agile and sticks him in the leg with a screwdriver to escape. Knowing that he can't match the kid's speed, Jason hurls a woodcutter's axe across the yard and into Lawrence's back, incapacitating him. His friends hear Lawrence screaming, but Clay warns them not to fall for Jason's trick, so the Crystal Lake killer disposes of his bait. Jason then sneaks onto the second floor as Trent gets his father's gun, and Bree goes wandering around for whatever reason. She's caught by Jason, who impales her on a deer antler just as Officer Brack arrives, apparently being the only officer in town. He approaches the door when Jason drops down behind him and stabs a fire poker through Brack's skull, causing Jenna and Clay to flee upstairs. Bree's body collapses, startling Trent, who opens fire through a door only to hit the already dead corpse of his new girlfriend. The three run outside together, where Trent tries to use the police radio, but Bree's body gets thrown on the windscreen, causing him to run into the woods terrified. He's now by himself and drops his gun in a creek when crossing it, but manages to make it to the nearby road and flags down a passing motorist. Trent suddenly has second thoughts that maybe the truck driver's Jason, who catches up with him, wasting time, and impales him in full view of the driver, then tosses him on the back of his truck to be taken away from Crystal Lake. Clay and Jenna took their own direction when fleeing, until they once again come across the abandoned camp. This time, though, they hear Whitney screaming from underground and find an entrance to Jason's tunnel system within his childhood cabin. They locate Whitney, but spend so much time trying to break her shackles that Jason arrives home expecting to see the face of his mother. But Clay's able to free Whitney, and the three escape, making Jason mad when he notices. He pursues Clay and Whitney, who escape the caves through a narrow choke point, but Jen is impaled by Jason from behind before the chase continues, giving them no time to grieve. The only remaining survivors make it out through an overturned school bus, but Jason already beat them there and stomps Clay's head through a window. He then enters the bus to find Whitney, but she manages to kick him in the face a few times to escape, while Jason takes his tunnels to catch her. Clay wakes up and the siblings retreat into Donnie's barn to try and hide, but Jason leaps through a window and begins fighting with Clay. Despite fighting back valiantly, Jason's about to kill Clay, when Whitney distracts him with his mother's locket while pretending to be Pamela Voorhees. This buys Clay enough time to attach a bear trap to Jason's back and wrap the chain around his neck as Whitney throws the other end into a wood chipper. It lynches Jason over the rafters, but the wood beams break and Jason rushes forward to give Clay his second concussion before snatching his mother's locket from Whitney. The chain continues pulling Jason backwards, and just before his head goes into the chipper, Whitney picks up his machete and sends him to see his mother in hell. The chipper takes out the brain, and the next morning, for whatever reason, Clay and Whitney dispose of Jason, his mask, and Pam's locket into the lake. About to move on with their lives, Jason suddenly leaps up through the dock and grabs Whitney as the camera cuts to black. And the movie ends.